fact, different tribes and different nations have different capabilities. Physical as well as mental capacities and capabilities. Basing our observation on that, what's it right in declaring that aliens are the superior race? Well, secondly, in South Africa, the Africans draw some justification from some of their holy books that black people are aggressive. And are they right in practice apartheid? Are they right or justified in believing and practicing apartheid? Yes. Or believing in different developments, simultaneous developments?
The Holy Quran answers this rather longish question in just one verse. Inna ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qabaila lita'arafu. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. That we have made you into tribes and various peoples, only so that you could know each other by those references. As far as the best among you is concerned, in the sight of Allah, the best is only he who fears him most. So, superior race, the concept of superior race goes overboard with that declaration that the best in the sight of Allah is only he who fears him most. Now, that is a beautiful criterion because mental or physical capabilities, which appear to be the criteria of superiority to worldly wise people, is completely missing in this. Because even the most backward of human people, even the most poorly developed among the human people, can fear Allah and excel others, apparently superior people, in that attribute or quality. So, in the sight of Allah, he becomes superior. So, if there are spurious notions among people about the superiority of a certain race of people, as far as the religion of Islam goes, this is the set criterion and we do not care what people believe. As far as apartheid is concerned, it is so categorically refuted and denied and rejected by Islam, and by that I mean by the Holy Quran and by the traditions and practice of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the question just does not arise. You know, the equality of Islam is in human values. This is why the whole system of Islam is based on that equality. There is no question of any difference of race. So whatever doubt might have been left in anybody's mind was ultimately and finally and completely wiped out by the last sermon of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the day of the last Hajj. And there he made this declaration that I trample under my foot all those notions of superiority of one against the other, of Arab against the Ajam, and so on and so forth. It's the most beautiful, most forceful declaration of human equality and human values. So, that is the last word in this respect.
Let us know about Khilafat and Shuddhi movements in India and the work done by Ahmadiyya Jamaat for the benefit and welfare of Muslims during the time when they were in need of help and guidance in that part of the world.
This is a fun question. And you think there will be time left after I have treated this question as it deserves to be treated, for any other question or for any other questioner to come? You have asked two important movements in the history of Ahmadiyya. One is Shuddhi and the other is Khilafah movement and Jamaat Ahmadiyya's reaction to this. Now this subject is a very wide subject which covers a very important period in the history of Ahmadiyya and in the history of the Muslims of the subcontinent and their ultimate frustration and disillusionment and how Jamaat Ahmadiyya took the right stance and worked for the uplift of the Muslim cause and everything. All this relates to a very wide subject covered by many years in fact. And on this some papers have been written and Tahir Ahmadiyya covers these two questions amply and satisfactorily. So such questions as are found in our books in detail and which are of historic nature, I think this is not the right forum for such questions to be asked. As far as Shuddhi movement is concerned, once I wrote a short pamphlet and tried to put everything in a small gist form. And that I have got available here, Shuddhi. And it's an interesting paper. I think it's also good for distribution among the non-Ahmadis. So, where is it? Could Jeremy sir is there? No. You know, there is under one cover various pamphlets and small booklets which I had published during my tenure in Waqf Jadid, particularly to meet the anti-Ahmadiyya propaganda, hostile propaganda launched by the Maududis. And one of the questions was about the Ahmadiyya role in the subcontinent regarding important issues which concern the Muslim nation as such. In one of those papers, there is one about Shuddhi. And I asked them to send me the whole package and they have sent me some lying somewhere here. So some of those papers could be republished, I think, and they should also be translated into some other languages. Nowadays particularly, when they are making the false propaganda about Ahmadis being disloyal to the cause of Islam, Naudullah and Ghali. So there are two good examples, Shuddhi and Khilafah movement and some of the Kashmir movement also is mentioned there.
We'll find out.
But thank you for reminding us about this. You know, in short, I can just tell you what happened. During Shuddhi, in an area in India, some Hindu Rajputs had been converted centuries before that time to Islam. And that area is called, because of there being a Rajput majority, perhaps the entire area is populated by Rajputs. It's called Rajputan. Those people were converted by some dervishes who could not educate them in Islamic ways of life. So, practically, as far as their culture went, they remained Hindus. All their behavior, their system, their meetings, their marriage ceremonies and rites, everything was almost Hindu. Yet, in name, they were all Muslims. They called themselves Muslims and they performed the religious rites as Muslims. That is, about death, about birth, and one or two occasions in life. They required some mullah, some sort of ceremony was held. And marriages. So the Hindus thought it was a good occasion to convert them back to Hinduism. And they started a movement which was called Shuddhi movement to purify the ex-Muslims and bring them back to the ex-Hindus and bring them back to the fold of Hinduism. When this news reached Qadian by some stray informer who said that I went there and I saw this happening. Hazrat Ibn Sisani was deeply moved and agitated. And he declared that we are going to launch a war against this movement of Shuddhism. And he asked Ahmadis to devote their lives, and then people from every walk of life, lawyers, doctors, and teachers, professors, the laborers, the educated, the uneducated, all alike, they offer their services. And the conditions laid down were simply this, that you have to shift for yourself, support yourself, and only you have to abide by the instructions of Jamaat Ahmadiyya as far as preaching goes. But your responsibilities would be your responsibilities. Your time would be ours. That was the condition. So they went there, and also in detail they were instructed later on that they are not to accept hospitality even if insistently offered by the local people, because some other Muslims had heard of this, and they sent their mullahs, who what sort of background they have, particularly regarding food. So they started becoming burdens on these people, and they expected halwas and chicken and things. And those people were very poor. The whole area, which was Muslim in Rajputana, was a rather backward and poor area. So Hazrat Muslim Maud ordered that you must not accept anything at their hands. Instead, if you can afford to give them alms personally, go and help the poor. So Jamaat Ahmadiyya launched a movement, and also appeals were made by other Muslims. And when they heard particularly that Jamaat Ahmadiyya had occupied the field, so they became jealous, and frantically they made every effort to fill that area with other Muslims. The result, whatever it was, it's a long story, I'll leave it out. But this is in a nutshell what Shuddhi movement was. Ultimately, law and order situation arose there, and the government of India had to interfere, and they tried to bring about a reconciliation between Hindus and Muslims. The result was that a conference was held under the auspices of British government in Delhi, in which, because of the non-Ahmadiyya Muslim majority and their exception to invitation to Ahmadiyya, the government of India did not invite Ahmadiyya community to participate in that reconciliation conference. All the other important sects among the Muslims were invited. Hindus and Aryans particularly, who were the leaders in that movement from Hindu side, they were invited, and the conference was held. So the Hindu leaders got up and said, you want us to reconcile with those from whom we have nothing to fear? Who are not our adversaries, they are doing nothing there. The ones we fear, the ones who are their adversaries, they are not here. And they are Ahmadis. So no reconciliation can be reached unless they agree to it. Because if they continue working, the problem is not solved for us. It will be then if we agree to this, whatever conclusion is reached here, agreement is reached here, the Ahmadis would be free to work on single-handedly, one-sidedly. So the problem would remain hanging in their favor, not in the Hindus' favor. So this objection was raised so strongly, they said no point in holding any conference without Ahmadis. That the British government had to send a telegram to Hazrat Muslim Maud hurriedly to send some delegation, otherwise the conference could not proceed. So Hazrat Sahib sent some delegates, an agreement of some sort was reached. The comments made by the Hindu papers in those days are a great tribute to the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam, and some of them I have quoted in that small pamphlet, Shuddhi and Jamaat Ahmadiyya. So they are worth reading. And Khilafat movement is also a long story, you better leave it up at the time. So your second of the several questions, please. Have you dropped all of the rest?
Sometimes I'm criticized that I am taking the floor of the time.
All right, you better wait for others. If they have to say something, we'll give them a chance. Otherwise, you can come and take up the thread where you left, right? Okay. Any other questions, please? Yes? You want to?
So it's quite disturbing factors, these natural disasters when it comes and cause suffering to humans, like drought and flood. That is not man-made. Usually we know that all the difficulty are, all the problems are man-made, but these kind of natural disaster does, how far the man is to be responsible. Man is not responsible, but these seem to be.
Yes, I understand your point. First of all, we should understand the philosophy of the national disaster on a larger canvas. The national disaster, as understood by human beings, is just an incomplete story. The true story reaches far behind in history. This true story, in fact, it stretches to billions of years of man's evolution in various stages. And when you try to understand the philosophy of these disasters, as you call them, then you understand that they are not useless and meaningless. They have played a very important role in the history of human development, or the development of life. And they have been blessings in disguise as far as the progress goes. So whether you understand a local disaster in the context of human values or not, if you look back in the history of evolution of life, you can understand easily that these disasters are a part of a general scheme of things under which the whole life is created. And they have played their part and they are not meaningless. So for the sake of a larger interest, smaller individual interests are always sacrificed. This is the principle. So because these disasters play an important role in the scheme of things, that is the scheme of evolution of life and progress of life, so they cannot be just discarded as meaningless or cruel because some individuals suffer. The general philosophy behind these disasters could also be understood when you study the phenomena of life and death as pitched against each other. In fact, as far as the number goes, death predominates life. And at each step in life, millions and millions of individuals are sacrificed. For each childbirth, billions of potentials of life are sacrificed. And again, in the entire universe, you see millions of species and untold number of individuals in various forms, in the various living forms. And what is their ultimate purpose? if you understand the scheme of things, they are made to serve human beings. And they only play a role to ultimately serve the ecology which is required by human development. And all this is a part of the scheme, so number is sacrificed for the sake of quality. That is, in essence, the meaning. So if billions upon billions of lives are sacrificed for human beings because they are superior, so if qualities are to be added to them or qualities of human beings are to be tested, put to test, some of their sacrifices are quite justified for that grand scheme of things. Now this is the general purpose and the general phenomena as I understand. But apart from that, when you apply this situation of disasters to human contexts, then you will understand that every disaster was avoidable or at least could be mitigated to a very great degree if human beings were moral animals, and the standard of morality and humanity was up to the mark which is attempted to be created by every religion. So because human beings lost their purpose, lost their direction and bearing, so after all this, billions of years of service to mankind and with all that has gone into their creation, the question is a different question. Do they deserve all this, or do they deserve to be wiped out? The answer, if you look at everything which God has done for the creation of mankind, would be that if after all this, mankind has lost the purpose of creation and it has become more imbecile in nature than human, then if entire mankind is wiped out, it is justified. You behave exactly in the same manner to your own creation, don't you? If you want to paint and try to draw the picture of a man, and instead a monkey is formed, as usually children do. They try to make a cow and instead a snake is created. There are such differences in the creation of poor artists. But sometimes it's the fault of the creation. It is properly made and it gets deformed. What do you do with that? You wipe out whatever you have created. So Allah has every right to wipe out all humanity if humanity does not serve the purpose of its creation. So these small droughts are only very small punishment, out of all proportions small, only to shake us up to what we truly deserve. This is why the Holy Quran tells us that if Allah had punished human beings for what they do, Allah would not have left any dabba on earth. You remember the verse? بما كسبوا. The second part I think is not correct.
ولو يؤخر الله الناس بظلمهم ما ترك
something like that. Better consult the Holy Quran and let me know the verse. This is his there. Yes. وَلَا يُؤَخِذُ اللَّهُ النَّاسَ بِمَا كَسَبُوا بِمَا كَسَبُوا وَظَلَمُوا بِمَا كَسَبُوا. Yes. So the philosophy given by the Holy Quran is this, that if Allah had decided to punish human beings for what they have committed, Allah would have wiped out the whole life from earth. Apparently, there is a dilemma because crime is committed by human beings and poor animals are wiped out for nothing, as if. But when you follow what I have said, then this verse is very clear in its meaning. And there is no other meaning attributable to it than what I have already said. That the purpose of the creation of other species of life was not just the creation of their creation in itself. They were created for mankind. So if man loses justification, all that was created to serve him should go out along with him, overboard. Nothing should be left. This is exactly what the Holy Quran says. Read it in the microphone so that it is recorded. وَلَوْ يُؤَاخِذُ اللَّهُ النَّاسَ بِظُلْمِهِمْ
وَلَوْ يُؤَاخِذُ اللَّهُ النَّاسَ بِظُلْمِهِمْ مَا تَرَكَ عَلَيْهَا مِنْ دَابَّةٍ وَلَكِنْ يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ إِلَى أَجَلٍ مُّسَمًّى.
It was
Surah Nahl and 62. Ayah 62 of Nahl.
the meaning is that if Allah were to bring to book mankind for their transgression, Allah would not have left any species of life on earth. So the punishment is meted out for mankind, and what is wiped out? Every species of life. So it holds only good in the explanation which I have given already. That the purpose of their creation was to serve mankind. So when the mankind ceases to deserve that mastery over the rest of the creation would go along. Any other question, please? There was you were next, please.
Very much, Azur, for giving me a chance to ask this question. How did this concept of the wrong concept of the finality of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of God be on him, creep into Islam, in spite of the fact that there have been mujaddis from time to time? They were imams like Imam Azam, Imam Abu Hanifa, and the other imams. How did it creep into Islam and got such a strong hold today?
As far as the imams go, were they well received by the people in their time? They were all ill-treated. They were all ill-treated. So goodness is what hurts people. Any man who is good for human beings, a true honest leader, is most undesirable, persona non grata, for a society which has gone too far away from human values. So, number one, the phenomena should be understood in the context of what the Holy Quran tells us about this attitude of human beings. The Holy Quran declares in two places that people before you had made this erroneous concept that there would be no prophet after so and so. So in Surah Jinn, for instance, Allah Ta'ala tells us that when a tribe which is called Jinn, whatever the nature of those people may be, they came and accepted Islam at the hands of Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. While they were going back to their people, they were talking between themselves and talking of their stupidities, of their stupidity and that of their elders. One of the stupid things they mentioned there was that, look here, we thought Allah would not create another prophet. And here it is. So the concept of finality of prophethood, as understood by the opponents of Ahmadiyya, according to the Holy Quran, is not a new phenomenon. It is a very old phenomenon. Again And the Holy Quran couldn't have mentioned it without any meaning or without any inherent message. The Holy Quran tells us that about Hazrat Yusuf, they had also created this wrong notion. It's that old. That first of all, when Yusuf came, they ill-treated him. After he died, they said Allah would never create another prophet. And how many prophets came between Hazrat Yusuf and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So why this? This was a message to the Muslims that we are warning you, people before you have misstepped and faltered in this path, and be warned. Don't follow such old people. Some of them ultimately repented. They look here what we thought and what happened. So that is as far as the positive, clear declaration of the Holy Quran goes. Holy Quran tells us that this concept of not being any other prophet in time after somebody is an erroneous concept which has been held previously by other peoples as well, which was falsified by Allah. That is one thing. Secondly, Allah Ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran that the very coming of a prophet is a phenomenon which is most loathsome to the people to whom a prophet is sent. So it is just an excuse that we are opposing so and so because he has started the concept of a new prophethood and this and that. The previous prophets, all of them, did not have that blame in their account, because this phenomena was not repeated at the time of every prophet. This allegation was not raised against every prophet, that you have become a prophet after so and so, while you were not expecting anybody. Other excuses came to their help to oppose a prophet, but without fail, every prophet was hated, and so intensely hated that except for the prophets, no other office bearer from Allah has ever been hated so strongly and intensely. So the most loathsome thing to the people is the concept of prophethood. And this is why it is not easy to claim to be a prophet. The hatred works in two ways. In the first place, the very strong opposition tries its best to root out the claimant and all the paraphernalia along with him. Now, unless he is rooted deeply in Allah's mercy and Allah's favor, this strong opposition is so strong and so powerful and overwhelming that it's impossible for an ordinary person to remain intact and to save him or his followers from that opposition. With the result that these people are destroyed. Either they are killed or their movement is destroyed and wiped out, and nothing is left of such movements. This is why Allah Ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran, وَلَوْ تَقَوَّلَ عَلَيْنَا بَعْضِ الْأَقَاوِيلِ. But that will come later on. I'll come to that later. Now the second part is that this opposition and strong hostility works in another way. If that that person who claims to be a prophet is not treated with such hostility and then he prospers, it would be very difficult for human beings to judge him to be a righteous man from Allah and a true claimant. Because chances happen, he made a claim and by chance he became prosperous. People could think. But if you feed into the computer all the factors against him and almost no factor in his favor to win against the entire people, then if still he prospers, that is the sign of his truth. So the real solid truth of the Prophet's claim lies mainly in this direction. If despite very strong hostile opposition, he not only survives, he becomes prosperous at every opposition. That is a sign that there is some superhuman power behind it. So it serves as a true proof, and it discourages false claimants as well. Because what happens to such prophets or claimants is a very strong discouragement to false claimants. So, once in Australia, 2 years ago, last year, when I spoke at the University of Edinburgh, the question and answer session was quite lengthened out, so much so that in fact we started trespassing on others' times, and we were told to vacate the hall ultimately. But some students became very interested, and one of them followed me up to the car. And the last thing he mentioned to me was that, look here, now I fully agree with you that whatever we had been told about the biblical concept of Jesus Christ is wrong. We have proved it according to the Bible, that he was never a God, he never claimed to be a God, there is no Trinity, all is acceptable. I also accept that he was liberated from the cross and he survived. But if God has to create someone from among us to be the Messiah, as I understand your notion is, then why shouldn't I be that Messiah? Why shouldn't Allah pick me up as Messiah? I said, there's no reason why. But you know what will happen to you? I said, I have accepted one Messiah, Hazrat Masih Maud Islam, and what happened to him was this, and what is happening to us even after 100 years from that time is this. He said, I'm not going to become a Messiah. Even if I'm not going to accept it. It's too horrible. So the claim in itself is a claim which cannot be falsely made by any man in his full sanity, unless one of the two things happen. Number one, either he has the backing and support of a strong tribe, and a political motivation is there which supports him all in all, or such a person is married. There is no third possibility. Now you look back at the history of false claimants, in each case they will be distinct from the rest of the prophets in this much, that when they claimed, a strong tribe was always behind them. A strong group of people was supporting them right from the start. While in the true prophethood phenomena, exactly the opposite happens. Previous to the claim, they are very popular. But the moment they make the claim, they are the most hated person suddenly and left entirely alone by the entire world around. Overnight, they lose the entire popularity and remain alone. So instead of going back after this first treatment, they go forward and make more claims which are still more loathsome to the people. For instance, when Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the first claim, his claim apparently was addressed to the Meccans, particularly to his family members. Anzir ashiratak al-aqrabin. And then it seems to progress into wider circles. And ultimately, in the end, he addressed the whole mankind, it seems, chronologically. This is the order. And this is exactly what the Orientalists have objected against his claim. They say that his claims were the creation of a human being because we see a progress, a development, and a sort of revolution in those claims, as if they were designed by human beings. First, he made a small claim. When ultimately it got digested, he took a step further and so on. Then when he reached Medina, then he claimed to be the prophet of the Jews as well and those of the Christians as well, that of the Christians as well. And then he said ultimately, okay, I am the prophet of the whole world. This is exactly the allegation made against Huzur Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam by the opponents of Islam. And this is also, interestingly, is exactly the allegation made by the non-Ahmadi mullahs against Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, what sort of prophet he is? First he says he is just a Mahmud, then he says he is also a Mahdi, then he becomes a Masih, and then he claims he is a prophet. He goes on and on, adding things to him, whatever he is, we don't know. Then he becomes a Krishna. And then he says, I am Ibrahim and Yaqub and everything. He said, this is a human design, obviously. While the similarity between the master and the slave is so clear, that if one is designed, the other has to be designed. If the other is not designed, then this competition is designed. But they miss the whole import of the situation. The fact is that this is the sign of truth, not the contrary. If you make a claim and that claim is met with strong opposition and you are punished for making that claim, then if you are a false man, you would rather retrieve your steps than go forward and make a still more bitter claim. This is against human nature. If somebody is declaring that whoever did this is the price for that person, suddenly a whole crop of people would raise their hand and say, we did it and we did it. But if somebody is declaring that some crime has been committed and we are going to blacken such and such person's face whenever he is caught, and we are going to beat him hollow and put him backwards on the back of a donkey and make a procession out of him, would a false claimant appear and say, yes, I did it? It's impossible. Wherever there is punishment, a false claimant has nothing to do there. Wherever there is reward, false claimants come. So the very first claim of the true prophets deprived them of the whole popularity and they left alone in the entire world. So to make a further claim is not against them, it is in favor of them. Despite having tasted the suffering at the hands of the opposition, they made a further claim to further antagonize them. And after they were treated in the same manner, they made a further claim. So that shows that they are not doing it falsely. Either they are mad, because, as I made it very clear, the false claimants can either be mad or they must have some support. And this is exactly what is borne out by the history of the false claimants of true prophethood. Either they were mad people and nobody paid any attention to them, or they had some support. The rest, to whom these two things do not apply, they are true prophets. And it's so clear a distinction that any man who is not prejudiced can easily see that this is exactly the proof of the truth of the prophethood of the prophet. Now, I'll further explain this situation. When a prophet makes such claims and he is ill-treated at the hands of the people, and yet he goes on making further claims and does not mend his ways and claims, then people are left with only one choice. Because those who know that there is no support behind him, even the support he has been withdrawn from under his feet, they have only one choice left: to declare him a madman. Or if the society believes in sorcery, they would declare him to be a sorcerer. So these are the two reactions of the Arab society against Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these are exactly the two reactions of the Muslim society and the non-Muslim society of India against Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu. He was declared to be a madman and also a sort of sorcerer who conjured up tricks and nothing more. So this is the reaction of the society against the prophethood, and the whole phenomena is based on the animosity of the people. So apparently, a very bad thing is resulting into some good things. The third benefit of this hostility, which is drawn by the prophets and their followers, is this, that number one, like the master, no false claimant could have dared to face such opposition just for nothing. So no false adherents can come to him when he has to pass through all this fire and has to suffer at the hands of the people around him just for believing in him. So a system of purification is set in motion. And that system of purification is the most important value in the eyes of Allah. If the believers in prophets were left alone, or if they were treated well at the hands of others, then more often than not, it would be the untrue people, the meaningless hooligans of the streets who would rush to him first. Because wherever there is some benefit is to be gained, these people rush first, and the noble-minded and the gentle people are all left behind. This happens everywhere in human society, even in among children. If the teacher is to distribute sweetmeats, then those boys who are hooligan in nature, or bullish, they would run forward and occupy the first place and come again and again and say, this is the first time we have come. And if they are to be punished, and some culprit is to declare that somebody has committed this mistake, come forward and have your beating. So these people will leave behind. They say, no, it was that, miskin looking boy, that gentle looking boy, he did it, we didn't do it. So this phenomena works everywhere in human nature. More particularly so when a claim to prophethood is made and some people begin to follow it. So this works as a sieve, a system of purification and criteria for the good people, only to come and get around the true claimant. So gradually they build. So the third or the fourth result of this phenomena is this, that if this progress goes on, and at every stage of hostility, instead of getting lessened in number and in strength and in influence, they become larger at every encounter. That is a further proof of their having the support of Allah. Because not only that they are not destroyed by this opposition, while they should have normally been destroyed, they gain, quite the contrary happens. They gain in strength in every direction from which they are attempted to be suppressed. So this phenomena, all these phenomena have been discussed in the Holy Quran, variously in various places. Number one, the Holy Quran declares, لَوْ تَقَوَّلَ عَلَيْنَا بَعْضُ الْأَقَاوِيلِ لَأَخَذْنَا مِنْهُ بِالْيَمِينِ ثُمَّ لَقَطَعْنَا مِنْهُ الْوَتِينَ فَمَا مِنْكُمْ مِنْ أَحَدٍ عَنْهُ حَاجِزٍ. That whenever a claimant comes, claiming to addressing the people, claiming to be the messenger of Allah, people get annoyed about it. And Allah tells them that, look here, this is not your business to get annoyed. It is my business. This is the message of this verse. He is saying something about us and attributing things to us. And you have no means to judge whether he is right or wrong. So instead of your getting annoyed, it is we who should get annoyed and we who should destroy him. And this is exactly what we do. So Allah tells them that, look, at the case of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you say, تَقَوَّلَ عَلَيْنَا بَعْضُ الْأَقَاوِيلِ. He has attributed to us one or two sayings wrongly, unjustifiably, while we didn't say that. Ba'd al-aqawil means one or two sayings. Taqawwala is bab al-tafawul, which means from call. When you are making a thing up which is not true, then you call it taqawwul. Like takalluf, when you are doing something artificially. So this is exactly the meaning of taqawwul. Law taqawwala alayna ba'd al-aqawi, if he had attributed things to us erroneously, wrongly, la akhazna minhu bil yamin, we should have caught him by the right hand. By the right hand is applicable both to the one who is caught and the one who is catching. This is the beauty of the Arabic language. La akhazna minhu bil yamin, that we could have caught him with our right hand, with full force, that means. And we would have deprived him from all sources of support. Right hand means, in his case, that if we had caught him by the right hand, he couldn't have defended himself in any way. فَأَخَذْنَا مِنْهُ ثُمَّ لَقَطَعْنَا مِنْهُ الْوَتِينَ, then we would have cut his jugular vein and the life artery. Wateen is in fact the life artery. And فَمَا مِنْكُمْ مِنْ أَحَدٍ عَنْهُ حَاجِزِينَ. Not only this, then even all of you, instead of opposing him, then would have tried to save him from our wrath, you would fail positively, you would not be able to defend him. So the phenomena is turned exactly the opposite way. The message here is that you are opposing him because he has made a claim about us. And you think that you are more sensitive about this falsehood than we are, to whom claims are attributed. You are not in a position to judge while we are in a position to judge. So we, as if we are not acting, we are not sensitive to this, and you are sensitive while you have no reason to be sensitive about it, you don't know anything. But if that were what you say, then it is not your animosity that would have destroyed him. It would have been our wrath which would have destroyed him. Even if you had become friendly towards him and supported him with all your might, you would have failed totally. This is the phenomenon. In another verse, the Holy Quran tells us about a person from the people of Pharaoh who had accepted Moses' faith, Moses' claim, secretly and quietly. Now, he did not belong to a very high order of those who believed because he was hiding his faith. That was the maximum standard he had. Yet he said something addressing his people which appeared so beautiful to Allah that he kept it in store for to be revealed to Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the time of the revelation of the Holy Quran. This is the beauty of what he said. He said to his people, when they were planning to murder Moses and his followers and put them to all sorts of atrocities, at that time he appeared and he addressed his people. And this is what Allah tells us to say. He said, وَإِنْ يَكُ كَاذِبًا فَعَلَيْهِ كِذْبُهُ وَإِنْ يَكُ صَادِقًا يُصِبْكُمْ بَعْضُ الَّذِي يَعْلَمُ. That, O my people, in vain, without any rhyme or reason, you are trying to oppose him. إِنْ يَكُ كَاذِبًا, you are opposing him, considering him to be a liar, that is all. But if he is lying, you will not suffer for his lies. What have you to do with him? Leave him alone. If somebody lies, he suffers, not those to whom he is lying. So just have nothing to do, no truck with him, that's all. That should be your reaction. So how can you suffer for his lies? But I tell you one thing, إِنْ يَكُ صَادِقًا, if he is right, يُصِبْكُمْ بَعْضُ الَّذِي يَعْلَمُ, then positively, definitely, that which he is threatening you with, that will overtake you. So in vain you are doing something which is not your concern, but you are opening up a possibility of danger for you. If he is right, then you must be punished by Allah. Keep aloof. That is the correct attitude towards the Prophet. So the hostility, of course, is there. Allah does not approve of that hostility, even against false claimants. So these mullahs who say because Hazrat Masih Maud al-Islam, according to them, is a false claimant, so we have every right to uproot Ahmadiyyat and everyone who follows him. That claim is totally falsified by the Holy Quran. If it was good at the time of Moses, it is still good. If it was not good at the time of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah would not have preserved that saying and related it to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam without any meaning, because it did not apply to him. It did apply to him as well, to Ummat Muslim as well. If anybody is making a claim and somebody thinks he is a false claimant, according to this verse of the Holy Quran, they have no concern with them, with such a claim. All they are to do reasonably and within their rights is that they should have no truck with such a person. Be aloof. But they must not oppose him, because the moment they oppose, they run the risk of being destroyed by Allah if he happens to be right. And that is a big if. Because whenever Allah speaks to some servant of his, he does not call any other human being as witness. It's only between him and Allah. That's all. So nobody, in fact, has any possibility of being a witness. So if I tell you something in private and send you to, for this session, for instance, with a message, and you say that I have been told, and you tell them that I was alone with Allah, with me, I'm sorry, with such and such person, and he has sent this message. No. Do they have a right to start beating you and telling you you are a liar, you are a false person, we can't accept you? Of course, if they are human beings, they won't behave like this. If the values of humanity remain intact, all they can say is that we don't believe you, we don't think you could have said. And unless we go and verify this from him, we are not going to act upon it. That is a normal, justifiable behavior. This is exactly what the Holy Quran is telling us. So in another place, the Holy Quran tells us that if a claim is made and you are opposing it, you won't stop opposing it, then for you there is another way of looking at this, and there is a very strong evidence which will prove to you that such a claimant was right and was from God. And that principle is mentioned in the verse following, as I'm going to recite. وَلَا يَرَوْنَ أَنَّا نَاتِي الْأَرْضَ نَنْقُصُهَا مِنْ أَطْرَافِهَا أَفَهُمُ الْغَالِبُونَ. Why don't we observe this phenomena that after every encounter, after every attempt to suppress the apparently weak, the result is that your own land is being lessened from the corners, from all the borders. And you are appearing weaker and weaker after every encounter, and those who are weak, they are becoming stronger in comparison. This is exactly the meaning. Afahumul ghalibun. So those who lose ground after every encounter, how can they become victorious in the end? So it's not a normal phenomenon that the stronger must become powerful and victorious. Exactly the opposite is happening to these people who have followed a claimant, that after every encounter you are losing ground, and against the claimants of prophethood who are true. They are frustrated, they are destroyed, a game of tantalization is played about them. And they think they have gained something, and ultimately when after the battle they keep the count, then they make the count, then they know that it was only the losses they suffered. So this is exactly what has happened to the movements of hostility against Ahmadiyya community. Look at the records in two eras. One prior to the movement, read their claims in their newspapers. And then after every movement, read their analysis of their failures. One after the other, they come out with another excuse that we failed because of this, we failed because of that, this happened and that happened. And ultimately, they say that they have emerged stronger than ever before. This is the verdict, invariably, of the most hostile enemy of Ahmadiyya after every encounter. Go back to the pre-encounter stage and they say, now it has the time come when we are going to uproot Ahmadiyya as if it never existed. The claims are so tall and so hostile and threatening that if you remember very well, during the Arab movement, the first Arab movement of Qadian, 33, 34 or 34, 35. During that period, Maulana Ataullah Shah Bukhari declared it in Qadian that you will see in a matter of days, Ahmadiyyat will be uprooted from every place, even from Qadian, to the extent that after a while, when people would come to Qadian and ask what Ahmadiyyat was, people would say, no, we don't know, never heard of it. And we will demolish the entire buildings of Qadian and raise them to the ground. And he was a good speaker of a sort, mob exciter. And he said, eat se eat baja denge. Qadian ki eat se eat baja denge. Look at those claims and look at the analysis later on about the Ahrar movement, how it failed, how the movement came to a most disastrous end. And how the very supporters of Ahrar started in writing poems of invectives against them. Look at Maulana Zafar Ali Khan's poem about these very Ahrars, where he says, Islam ke Ahrar, Islam na Punjab ke Ahrar, Islam ke Gaddar. It's a beautiful poem. Who he himself was an Ahrari before that. So this happened that time, this happened in 53, pre-53 era and post-53 era. This happened in 74, look at the pre-74 era and post-74 era. And this is going to happen this time, that I assure you. Inshallah. With a bigger bang, inshallah, the whole world would hear the resounding of Ahmadiyya victory, inshallah. And I can see the very signs appearing. You see, inshallah, this is going to happen. This is a history which is unchangeable. Right from the time of Adam, it is consistent. Not a single instance can be quoted where this history can be changed. For the last 100 years we are observing this. How can we lose faith? Because at our back we have the full history of religion and all the pious people that ever were among mankind. Now look at this, their excuses. They are so interesting to read after they fail. First they say that now we have come to the arena and now we'll see how Ahmadis are saved from our hands or our hostile attacks on. So in the end, when they analyze the situation, they come out with very interesting excuses. During the Ahrar movement, the first claims were, nobody can save them from our hands. And afterwards they said, look here, it was the English, the British who saved them from us. Obviously they were planted by the British, so they saw to it that no harm comes their way. So we tried to help Allah as best as we could, but poor Allah, that was in essence their excuse. This was their analysis, but the true analysis when you look back at their excuse is this, that in the Holy Quran Allah said that when I wanted to destroy anybody, nobody could save him from my wrath. Even if you gathered all your might between me and him, still I would reach him, and nobody would be able to save him from my wrath and destruction which is going to overtake him. Yet the Ihrar said, this verse of the Holy Quran is to be maintained. What happened was, Allah was sleeping and kept sleeping. The claimant came and went his way and no harm came his way. When the community started to spread, then we realized that something has happened to our Allah. He's not waking up to the situation, he's not taking law into his own hands, so why shouldn't we take the law into our hands? So we tried to help Allah. But poor Allah, he could not be helped. There was the British might between us and him, or that is from between Allah's side and his side. So everybody clapped and said, this is the most beautiful excuse, we understand why you failed. So after the partition, the British went their way. They became a tale of the past, a story. And a Muslim state came into being. And it was the first Muslim League government which, in alliance with the Ihrars and other hostile elements and Maududis and things, tried to trample Ahmadiyyat out. And they said, they declared, and if you read the pre-53 era reports, you'll be surprised how sure, how positive they are. They say it in so many words, that previously they were the British people who saved them. Now we'll see who stands between us and Ahmadis. And they are positively to be destroyed and completely wiped out. So after 53, what happened? You look at the analysis made by Maulana Maududi and some other Maududites and Ihraris and so many others. The nutshell of that analysis is this, that that in fact what happened was that we understood and the Western bloc understood the dangers of Ahmadiyyat and we wanted to really wipe them out. But unfortunately, the Bengalis did not understand this. And because they held the democratic majority, and the Prime Minister was Khaja Nazimuddin, when he was also a Bengali, he stood in the ways of our wrath and Ahmadiyyat, or the wrath of Allah and Ahmadiyyat. So Bengal saved him. This was in nutshell the analysis. What happened? Allah said, all right, we'll take Bengal away, like we took British away previously. So you are not left with any excuse. This is exactly the excuse put forward by them in black and white, imagine. And the second part of it was that also another factor which played its role in this was that it was a provincial movement of Punjab mainly. And it was not a movement by the central government. So, why it could not be the movement of central government? Because of Bengal and other factors. So in fact, two parts were to that analysis. One, there being a provincial movement, and second, there being Bengalis in the way of Ahmadiyyat's destruction. So Allah couldn't help. So they launched a movement in 74. Bengal was no longer there. The central government was that of Bhutto. And he claimed in the most resounding tones that the Sehra, the credit of Ahmadiyyat's destruction will go to me. I have solved the issue which nobody else could solve. Nabi Salman, 90 years old problem. And while he was hanged, just before hanging, he was still saying that I am the solver of the 90 years old problem. And everybody clapped for a while. That a great thing has been committed. But afterwards, when they had time to lick their wounds and see things in the daylight, they realized that they had gained nothing whatsoever. What happened was, number one, Bhutto, along with that party, which was responsible mainly for this solution of the problem, were completely destroyed by Allah. While they remained powerful, so much powerful after this, that if a true election was to be held after martial law, still Bhutto's party would win. Still it is the ghost of Bhutto which is threatening Zia and his supporters in the regime. This is why they don't go to the elections. They are afraid of Bhutto. Still, after it is being done. But Bhutto alive and his entire force and the entire support of the world could not save him from the wrath of Allah. If he was right, if it was the enemy of God whom he had ultimately succeeded in, if not destroying, in deeply wounding, then what sort of reaction should Allah showed to him? What a strange God he is now. That first of all, he does not react to such situations which are in fact against him. He does not react against such movements which are in fact against the very essence of religion, if we are wrong. And he becomes completely paralyzed. But when people begin to help him and they sort of achieve some success, then suddenly the whole paralysis disappears and he wakes up to destroy those people who helped him. Strange God. Not one which is witnessed in the history of religion at all. And the nutshell was, the sum total was, that the same would now, within the 10 years of their so-called success, started saying that look here, Ahmadiyyat has emerged much stronger than before. What have we gained? They are spreading faster. They are gaining more in influence, in number, in wealth, in everything. So what is the net result of that exercise of 74? So some more hurdles should be put in their place. And the first hurdle which they had put in 74, it was a hurdle of course, which was put in the way of Ahmadiyyat's progress, was mainly this, that they said that if we declare them non-Muslims officially, only then their preaching would be frustrated and stopped, and they will cease to spread among them. The claim of the mullah was, previous to 74, that whatever arguments we give against Ahmadis, our arguments do not reach the common man. And the common man also is incapable of understanding those arguments. Ahmadis go to them and deceive them and say things which the commoner doesn't understand, so poor man in simplicity accepts Ahmadiyyat. So to stop this deception, it is necessary that categorically they are declared not Muslims. No Muslim in his sanity would jump that high and cross over the wall of Islam and land into the non-Islamic land. That is the sort of concept which they had created, and they in fact succeeded in implementing that. And Allah permitted them to do it so that another idol is broken. Like previously, Allah had been breaking every idol they created. They said, all right, if this is the idol, you think this is going to work against us, go ahead and do it. They did it. And now their analysis is that Ahmadiyyat is spreading much faster than before 74. And this is true. General Chishti, when he was in power, he was asked once in Azad Kashmir about the measures they were taking against Ahmadiyyat. So his answer, which is published in Pakistani papers, was this, that we took every measure to stop Ahmadis from spreading through preaching. But most unfortunately, according to the government reports, since 1974, they have gained 10% more adherents through preaching, which never happened in the pre-74 era. So their so-called success was in fact a stone laid for their own destruction. And this is why they have reacted so strongly against us, and they say now, unless they are deprived of all human rights, we cannot stop them from spreading. The result is that we are spreading even faster. And in certain places in Karachi, in Pakistan, reports are coming that previously the rate of conversion was, for instance, 30 per month, and after this ordinance, that rate has risen to twice as much. I mean, I'm just quoting figures. And people who are taking interest in Ahmadiyya after this ordinance are coming from all walks of life, even some people who were never approached by Ahmadiyya. They themselves come to Ahmadiyya and tell them that preaching is stopped to you, is a crime for you, made a crime for you, but not for us. So we are free. We come to you and so tell us about Ahmadiyya and we take the responsibility. And the Ahmadis take the risk. They say, all right, even if we are punished, and if this is a crime, it's all right for us. So I get reports, daily reports of strange pro-Ahmadiyya inclinations and tendencies among every class of the people. In civil, in military, among the illiterate, in villages. Even people come and accept Ahmadiyya without any Ahmadi having ever spoken to. For instance, some people have accepted Ahmadiyya just because Allah had shown them in dream that Ahmadiyya is true. And just like that, they were left with no choice, they came and accepted Ahmadiyya. So as far as Ahmadiyya goes, every measure they take against us, that is going to be frustrated, and every idol they make in their imagination, that idol is going to help them. That idol will be broken by Allah. And this is the phenomenon. Hostility is permitted to flourish as it pleases. Yet it is frustrated. Entirely in every direction. Defeat is their lot and victory is the lot of the people. So now you understand that the animosity against the prophets is in fact a blessing in disguise. Otherwise, they are the most loved people by Allah. Why should Allah put them in such a hazardous situation? To show their love and nearness is a must. To show Allah's love and nearness is a must. Now, there is no time left for other questions because this was a very important question Dr. Sahib asked, and I wanted to take some time explaining the answer. So the time is not wasted because I think this is a very good question. If you come tomorrow, maybe you can ask this question tomorrow.
Yes.
Will you come tomorrow?
Yes,
Or if it's a question which requires a short answer, you put your question. If it is a question which requires a short answer, I'll dispense with it now.
Yes, it is.
Otherwise, I'll defer it to tomorrow.
In the essence of the philosophy of preaching, is it right to use logic and reason? In the essence of the philosophy of preaching, is it good to use logic and reason? Yes, it is.
It does because the meaning of preaching is simply this, that you see light and you see goodness in some direction. And you also see darkness and suffering and destruction in another direction. And just by calling them to the light, you can save a few people. What man would not avail of this opportunity while he can help others? If he truly believes and honestly believes that truth and success lies in the direction in which he is moving, and he sees his friends and other fellow beings moving in the direction of destruction, if he is a human being truly, it is a must for him to call them back. More he feels for his fellow beings, more strongly he should be motivated to preach to them. So Ahmad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has illustrated this phenomena in a most beautiful way. He says that my example and the example of those who are opposing me or running away from me is like this, that I see a great pit of fire, raging with fire, and I see people rushing towards that pit, and I run after them. They ill-treat me, they try to run away from me. I try to drag them back, and this struggle is going on. This is my preaching to the men. So because he was true, he saw destruction ahead. It was impossible for him to remain aloof. Even if he was maltreated, he had no choice but to call people to the right path and to safety. So greater the consciousness of this reality rises in one's mind, more preaching minded he would automatically become.